Welcome to lecture number 60. The historical topic today is 6.6, The Rise of Industrial Capitalism, and the theme is Work, Exchange, and Technology. There is one learning objective, and that is explain the socioeconomic continuities and changes associated with the growth of industrial capitalism from 1865 to 1898. The first key concept says large-scale industrial production, accompanied by massive technological change, expanding international communication networks, pro-growth government policies, generated rapid economic development and business consolidation. The first couple aspects of the key concept have been covered in previous lectures already, and the large-scale industrial production that sees the most growth is the manufacturing of steel using the Bessemer process. The United States overtook Britain as the largest producer of steel and put out more than 11 million tons of steel per year by 1900. Other technologies that result in big changes are the telegraph and telephone. One of these technologies is applied to international communication in the form of the International Telegraph Line. The railroad industry is the one that's leading the business consolidation referenced by the key concept. Owners of railroad companies are slowly adapting standards across the entire industry to increase efficiency and travel time. What sped up this process was when one line would buy up or merge with a nearby competitor. After the merge, the company would standardize all of the rail it operated to the same gauge or spacing between the tracks. The result of this is a larger company that controls travel within one region. That's good because it means faster travel for customers as they require fewer transfers across long distances, though it may be bad in that one company charges higher rates in the absence of competitors. An example of this is the New York Central Railroad. It controlled all of the rail lines from New York City to Chicago, and the person who was in charge of this company was Cornelius Vanderbilt, and then later his son, William Henry Vanderbilt. Because of his consolidation, they became one of the wealthiest families in U.S. history. Other industries begin to copy this type of consolidation of buying up competitors to control the largest market share. These business practices of consolidation increase profits as it is easier to maximize efficiency. The level of wealth that this generates for individuals is unprecedented at this time. Critics of these companies point out that they wield enormous influence, especially over government when they are not properly regulated. The political cartoon on the bottom right suggests that these leaders of various industries are actually the ones that are controlling the U.S. Senate. The next key concept expands on the business consolidation. It says, business has made use of redesigned financial and management structures, advances in marketing, and a growing labor force to dramatically increase the production of goods. Financial and management structures refers to a different type of business consolidation. One way in which these businesses consolidated was through interlocking directorates and trusts. This was done when companies wanted to acquire competitors but had to contend with anti-monopoly laws of various states. What companies then did was to set up a looser ownership structure in which the controlling entity would fill the seats in the board of directors of the acquired company with people that would guide the company to not compete with the parent company. They could set prices in order to make the most amount of profit and also to push out any other competition that they might have inside the same industry. These practices stifle competition, and a lack of competition in the market leads to higher prices for consumers without the benefit of a better product or service. The political cartoon on the top left shows William Henry Vanderbilt, the head of the New York Rail Line, and other railroad magnates like Jay Gould and his legs pulling strings in unison on the railroad industry. Another criticism of these captains of industry was that they were getting rich off of the backs of the working class, and the profits are not being shared with the working class. Advances in marketing like mail-order catalogs made just about every new product available for purchase in any part of the country. The bottom left shows an example of one such ad from a catalog advertising seeds and radishes. The growing labor force was necessary for keeping the prices of new products low. Population, especially in the Northeast, continued to grow due to immigration coming from Southern and Eastern Europe. These migrants will be covered in a separate historical topic, but in this topic they are relevant as a source of plentiful low-wage labor. The large labor force allows producers to pay lower wages. The next key concept says, many business leaders sought increased profits by consolidating corporations into large trusts and holding companies, which further concentrated wealth. In these next two slides, there's various examples of these very wealthy business leaders and their methods. The first is Andrew Carnegie. His picture is on the top left of the slide, and he made his fortune in the steel industry. His contribution to business management was the utilization of vertical integration. That means that Carnegie Steel Company, later the U.S. Steel Company, owned every step in the production of steel, from the extraction of the ore to its transportation to the smelting, the refining process, and the delivery to the customer. By owning every step of the process, the Carnegie Steel Company eliminated middlemen and saved more of their profits for themselves. Carnegie becomes one of the richest people in history. That's a pattern in this period of history. He sold the company in 1900 for about $400 million. It goes on to become the first billion-dollar company. Carnegie devoted the rest of his life to philanthropy, giving away his money to charitable causes. The next person is J.D. Rockefeller. He becomes the wealthiest person in U.S. history. He makes his fortune with Standard Oil Company. At first, the oil was being used for lamps in order to light a room. Through his process of standardizing the oil so that it would burn at a constant rate, he builds the Standard Oil Company. He utilizes what's called horizontal integration. That means he bought out all the other competitors in the oil industry that were competing against him. By buying out the competitors, he could form a monopoly, increase prices without need for improving the product, and therefore increase his profits. Rockefeller also used trust to manage the companies that he bought out. The other companies might retain their same name, and they might retain the workers inside of the company, but he would put people in charge that worked for him, and those people in the trust would work in tandem with Standard Oil companies, so that there would be no competition between the parent company and its other acquisitions. J.P. Morgan was a banker, but his holdings were a lot more diverse. He bought up bankrupt railroads after the 1893 panic, and he consolidated those railroads. They became very profitable for him because he had his hands in about every industry that you can imagine. He created what's called a holding company. This is a company that holds many different companies inside of it, and of course they work in tandem so that all of the business actions that happen within each company are working for the greater good of the holding company. In the railroad industry, he uses interlocking directorates again, appointing the board of directors for companies in the same industry. He could control prices and increase profits by eliminating competition. Jay Gould is probably the person that embodies the Gilded Age the most. His methods weren't all that different from his peers, but because he often tried to profit at the expense of other business leaders, he was often villainized in his own time. He speculated on stocks and sold his interest in companies before their bubble bursts. He had a personal rivalry with William Henry Vanderbilt over the control of the Erie Railway Company that came at a high financial price for the both of them. His most ambitious plan to make more money was when he and a group of investors tried to corner the gold market. It resulted in a nationwide economic panic. The actions of these business leaders were all legal at the time due to an absence of any federal regulatory laws. Though they helped the economy grow, there were instances in which their ambitions hurt the nation's economy and did not equitably share their company's profits with workers. Now we go on to the question of whether to call these people captains of industry or robber barons. There's a positive connotation when you call them captains of industry and a negative connotation with robber barons. Captains of industry are responsible for the increased production that helped the U.S. economy become one of the largest in the world. Robber barons eliminated competition, increased prices, and generated more inequality between the rich and the poor. The question that is probably most important in choosing is if you think the economic growth was more important than the experience of the workers or the possible monopolistic activity. The last key concept is business increasingly looked outside the U.S. borders in an effort to gain greater influence and control over markets and natural resources in the Pacific Rim, Asia, and Latin America. The United States would get raw materials from Latin America and the Pacific Rim. They would import sugar and rubber from Latin America. They would import sugar and other fruits from Hawaii. In 1892, American fruit growers and business leaders with the help of the U.S. Marines overthrew the monarchy in Hawaii. The monarch queen Luluokalani was seen as a threat to business interests because she wanted to shift political power back to native Hawaiians. Additionally, the United States had just raised tariffs on imports, and it affected the price of their fruit exports. Even though they were American companies, they were still subject to the tariff because Hawaii was a foreign territory. The solution of the American business owners in Hawaii was to make Hawaii a U.S. territory and bypass the tariff altogether. The fruit growers had the support of President Benjamin Harrison, but could not get the annexation through before the end of his term. The next president, Grover Cleveland, rejected annexation, so Hawaii wouldn't be annexed until President McKinley's term in 1898. Overall, the United States increases its presence in the world economy, and by the year 1900, they are one of the largest economies in the world. And finally, the recap. The railroad industry led the way in big business practices, and it led to massive profits and decreased competition in the market. You need to be aware or familiar with the words trusts, interlocking directorates, horizontal and vertical integration, because the College Board put these specifically in their key concept outline. There was a new class of mega-rich captains of industry or robber barons, whichever the term you want to use. And finally, U.S. international trade grows. Thank you for watching. If you would like to watch the next lecture, you can click on the video link on the screen, and if you're looking for more practice to help you on the AP exam, you can visit APUSHslides.com. I wish you the very best in all of your studying and look forward to seeing you back on the next lecture.